The CEO fired me on a Tuesday at 10:47 a.m. By Friday afternoon, his boss's boss was calling me from Florida, voice tight, asking if I'd please consider coming back. I didn't pick up. I was in my garage changing the oil on my truck. Some things can wait, some things can't. Turns out I was the second kind. They just didn't figure that out until I was already gone. My name is Gary Marsh, 54 years old, Pittsburgh, PA. I spent 8 years as compliance and infrastructure manager at Hartwell Industrial Systems, a mid-sized software company that builds supply chain and industrial compliance tools for manufacturers. About 380 employees, roughly $180 million a year in revenue. Not flashy, but real. The kind of company that keeps factory floors running and OSHA audits from turning into federal problems. I didn't come up through the usual path. No MBA, no computer science degree from somewhere impressive. I started as an IT contractor at a steel plant in my mid-30s, learned systems the hard way, and worked my way into permanent roles from there. By the time I landed at Hartwell, I already knew how to think like the infrastructure itself, not the org chart version, the real version, where the pressure points were, what would break first under load, what nobody had bothered to document because it had always just worked. For 8 years, I was the guy who got the 11 p.m. call when something critical started failing. I built the encryption architecture, I designed the deployment authorization stack, I wrote the compliance certificate pipelines that kept our industrial clients in good standing with federal safety requirements. I set up the offboarding protocols. I designed the whole system to be airtight, because in industrial compliance software, airtight is not a preference, it is a requirement. One expired safety cert on a client's end. One missed renewal, and real people in real factories face real consequences. Nobody fully understood what I had built. Not the CTO, not legal, not the board. They saw green dashboards and assumed someone competent was maintaining them. That is the thing about good infrastructure. When it works, it is invisible. And when the person who built it walks out without a proper handoff, invisible becomes a problem very quickly. Noel Briggs arrived about 4 months before he fired me. 38 years old, flew in from the Bay Area. His last company was a fintech app that folded after 2 years. The board hired him to, in their words, reinvigorate the brand. I sat in his first all-hands meeting and watched him click through a slide deck with a section titled Eliminate Legacy Overhead. He defined legacy as anyone over 40 who had been at the company more than 3 years. I was 54 with 8 years in. I did the math right there in my seat. He did not schedule one-on-ones. He scheduled alignment sessions, did not ask for status updates, asked for energy check-ins. You could not ask a simple question without him saying something like, "Let us unpack that together." Within 6 weeks, he had restructured 2 departments, brought in outside contractors for roles that required deep institutional knowledge, and started referring to the infrastructure team as a cost center with a maintenance mindset. I kept my head down, did my job. I had seen this pattern before. Company stabilizes, leadership rotates, and the people who actually built the thing get treated like old furniture that needs clearing out to make room for something newer. I was not surprised by Noel. I was ready for him. 2 years before Noel ever set foot in Pittsburgh, I had started building what I called the keystone. It started small, a few scripts that monitored certificate expirations across critical systems, then a private dashboard tracking authorization dependencies, then something more deliberate, a custom USB hardware token I built with an old friend from my contractor days, a guy who had spent years doing cryptography work for industrial control systems. We called it the keystone because that is what it was. Pull it out and everything above it comes down. The device had no labels, no identifying marks. Looked like a cheap thumb drive you would find loose in a junk drawer, but it functioned as a physical cosigner on every encryption unlock and every deployment push in our system. No token present, no authorization. Highest credentials in the company did not matter. Root access did not matter. The system would just sit there and return the same line. Authorization pending. I never registered it in any asset inventory, never mentioned it in an email or a ticket, never logged it in our project management system. If you did not know it existed, you would not even know what was missing. You would just know that nothing was moving and you could not figure out why. Alongside the keystone, I built something else, something legal, something documented. I worked it into the operations charter during a quarterly review under the previous leadership. Section 9C. It stated that I was the designated encryption cosigner for all critical infrastructure releases, and that I could only be removed from that role through a formal succession protocol. Written clearance from me, full credential transfer, documented step by step. I made sure it was in the right place to be missed on a casual read, deep in an appendix. Wedged between 2 sections nobody ever opened, but I also made sure the right signatures were on it. Roland Hartwell, the founder. 2 board members who were still sitting on the board the day Noel fired me. I was not building a weapon, I was building a contract. One that said, remove me the right way and everything transfers clean. Remove me the wrong way, and the system does what it was designed to do, protect itself. The morning Noel called me into that glass conference room, I already had the keystone in my coat pocket. I had been carrying it for 3 weeks, ever since he started making noise about restructuring the infrastructure team. He was already seated when I walked in. Legs crossed, MacBook open. He looked up, gave me a smile that did not reach his eyes, and said he would get straight to it, that my role was no longer aligned with the company's strategic direction, that they were moving toward a more agile model, that the exit was behind me. I stood there for a moment, did not say anything, just looked at him. Then I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked out. No box, no goodbye email, no drama. Just a hand in my coat pocket, fingers resting on the keystone, walking past security and out into the parking lot. Pete Kowalski caught up with me near the elevator. Pete was the lead engineer, 46 years old, Pittsburgh his whole life. Good guy, not a political player. He looked like he had just been told the building was on fire and someone had locked the exits. Gary, he said, before you go, where's the authorization token for the release cycles? Legal's asking. They need to push a compliance update for the Delco account. I looked at him. What token? He blinked. You know the hardware key for the deployment sign-offs? I shrugged. I assumed that was already transferred to DevOps. Then I walked out. I want to be clear about something. I had talked to my lawyer 2 weeks before that conversation. I knew exactly what I was doing and exactly where the legal line was. Section 9C put the responsibility for credential succession entirely on the company. If Hartwell terminated me without completing the offboarding protocol, the liability for any downstream system failures fell on them, not on me. My lawyer had reviewed it 3 times. The clause was clean. The signatures were valid. I was not sabotaging anything. I was simply no longer there to authorize anything. There is a difference, and that difference was documented in the operations charter with Roland Hartwell's signature on it. I drove home, let wrench out into the backyard, made a pot of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened a private monitoring dashboard I had set up outside the company network. Just watching, not touching anything. Just watching the logs come in. It took about 5 hours for the first failure to surface. Pete was running a routine deployment update for a logistics client. Standard stuff, invoice reconciliation sync, the kind of push they had done dozens of times. He ran the release script, grabbed his coffee, and the script stalled at the signing checkpoint. Authorization pending. He figured it was a config issue. Tried again. Same result, called Diane Foss from DevOps. She checked the pipeline. Clean, access keys valid. CI/CD stack showing green across the board. They rebooted the deploy node, killed all hanging processes. Tried a manual override, which should have flagged immediately as a protocol violation. The system came back with one line, authorization denied, co-signature required. By the next morning, 5 separate pipelines had gone still. SSL certificate renewals failed to process. The data warehouse archiving flagged incomplete. Payroll sync through errors, and then the one that changed the whole temperature of the situation. The OSHA compliance dashboard for 3 industrial clients switched from green to manual review required. That last one mattered in a specific way. Hartwell had a federal safety audit coming in less than 3 weeks. Our platform managed the safety certification renewals for several manufacturing clients. If those certs did not renew on schedule, those clients could not pass inspection. That was not a billing dispute. That was not a software inconvenience. That was potential federal violation territory for companies that ran factory floors with real workers on them. Noel held an emergency stand-up that afternoon in the middle of the open floor plan, paced around using words like platform turbulence and resilience audit and velocity recalibration. Nobody in that room believed a word of it. The engineers knew something structural had broken. They just did not know what. Tech blamed DevOps. DevOps said the pipeline was clean and pushed it back to legal. Legal showed up like someone who had been asleep and was still putting their shoes on, demanding escalation and asking who had final sign-off authority on release execution. Pete, sweating through his hoodie, said one word, Gary. Someone asked if that had ever been updated. Pete said he did not know that it had always been Gary's thing. It was not just my thing. It was the thing, the load-bearing wall they had all been leaning against for 8 years without ever noticing it was there. Clyde Reeves, head of legal, 51 years old, was the only person in that building who responded to a crisis by reading instead of talking. He pulled every document he could find, Confluence archives, old board packets, policy appendices, shared drives full of folders with names like Do Not Delete Final v3. He spent 60 hours going through all of it. At hour 61, he found section 9C. He read it once, then he read it again. Then he closed his laptop, walked into the conference room where Noel and the senior team were still trying to reverse engineer the problem, and laid it out flat. Gary Marsh is the designated encryption cosigner for all critical infrastructure releases. It is written into the operations charter. Signed by Roland Hartwell and 2 current board members. The clause is non-transferable without a formal succession protocol and Gary's written clearance. We terminated him without executing a single step of that protocol. The room went quiet. Noel leaned forward. Can we overwrite it? Clyde looked at him the way you look at someone who just asked if they can unbreak a window by thinking about it. No. Build around it, 12 months minimum. Full recertification of every client, new encryption keys across all subsidiaries. And that assumes we do not get sued halfway through by a manufacturing client whose OSHA cert lapsed because we did not read our own charter before we fired someone. Someone in the back of the room said it quietly, barely above a whisper. She built a kill switch. Clyde shook his head. We approved a kill switch. He just made sure nobody noticed it until it mattered. Word got back to Roland Hartwell by Thursday morning. Roland was 69 years old, semi-retired, living in a house outside Tampa with a screened porch and a standing fishing trip every other Friday. He had founded Hartwell Industrial Systems 22 years ago out of a rented office in Shadyside, built it from a 6-person shop into a $180 million operation, and handed off day-to-day operations to a board he trusted to not do something catastrophically stupid. He joined the emergency Zoom from what looked like that screened porch, half-buttoned shirt, coffee mug, the kind of expression a man gets when he has been retired long enough to forget how bad corporate decisions can smell, and then someone opens a window and reminds him. He did not say hello. He looked at the screen and said, "Who pulled the keystone?" Nobody answered right away. Noel tried to frame it as a transitional systems issue, said they were working through some unexpected infrastructure dependencies following a personnel change. Roland cut him off before he finished the sentence. You fired Gary Marsh without a succession handoff. Noel started to respond. Roland held up a hand. That is not a personnel decision. That is a structural failure. Gary did not just hold a job title. He held the authorization layer for every critical release this company pushes. I gave him that authority personally because he asked for it quietly, did not make a production out of it, and explained exactly why the system needed it. He said he was tired of watching people cut corners to look fast. Said he wanted the infrastructure to outlast whoever happened to be running the place. He looked directly at Noel. Turns out he was right to worry. Pete spoke up from his corner of the grid. He had not slept in 2 days, and it showed. He held up a small USB device between 2 fingers, close enough to the camera that everyone on the call could see it clearly. This is what we think is the master token. We found a reference to it in an old equipment log, but we cannot use it. There is no backup authentication layer. The token only completes the handshake when Gary initiates the sync from his end. Without him, it is just a piece of plastic. Roland set his mug down. Where is the backup? Pete gave a short, tired laugh. He was the backup. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight to it, not the uncomfortable pause of a meeting that has run long. The heavier kind where a room full of people all arrive at the same conclusion at the same moment and nobody wants to be the first one to say it out loud. Wanda Halbert had been quiet through most of the call. She was the independent board director, 55 years old, former operations consultant, the kind of person who listened twice as long as she talked and noticed things other people walked past. She had been doing her own digging since the day the system stalled, not just through the operations charter, but through the internal communication logs from the weeks leading up to Gary's termination. She had found something 3 weeks before Noel fired Gary. Clyde had flagged Section 9C in an internal email. The subject line was straightforward. Review required before any senior infrastructure changes. Noel had been copied, the email had been opened, read receipt confirmed. Noel had proceeded anyway, had not mentioned it to the board, had not flagged it to legal, had signed off on Gary's termination knowing the succession protocol had not been initiated, and had said nothing. Wanda did not bring this up on the Zoom call with Noel present. She waited until the call ended, then sent a short message to Roland and the 2 other board members. 4 sentences. The last one was a request for an emergency board session that evening. The session lasted 47 minutes. I did not know any of this until Pete told me later, but I had a rough idea of what was happening from the outside. The monitoring logs were lighting up. Failed handshake attempts every few hours, different credential sets each time. They were cycling through every elevated access account in the system, trying to find a way around the authorization requirement. None of them worked. On Thursday evening, my phone showed a missed call from a number I did not recognize. Florida area code. I did not call back. Friday morning, Pete texted. Just 3 words. Call me, please. I was in the garage. I finished what I was doing, washed my hands, and called him back. He picked up on the first ring. He sounded like a man who had been holding his breath for 72 hours and was not sure if he was allowed to exhale yet.
Gary,
I do not even know where to start. I did not say anything. The systems are still locked. We have got an OSHA audit in 18 days. 2 clients have frozen payments. One of them, the Delco account, sent a notice of potential breach yesterday because their quarterly safety cert did not renew. Legal is managing it, but Clyde says if we do not restore authorization in the next week, they are looking at formal proceedings. He paused. Noel is gone. Board voted him out last night. Wanda found out he knew about Section 9C before he let you go. He hid it from the board. Roland pushed for the vote and it was not close. I let that sit for a second. Roland wants to talk to you directly. So does Wanda. They are not asking you to come back. They understand that is off the table. They just want to know if you're willing to have a conversation. I looked down at Wrench. He was sitting by the garage door watching me the way dogs do when they are waiting to see which direction things are going. Send me a Zoom link, I said, and tell Clyde to have a clean copy of the operations charter open when we connect. Pete exhaled, actually exhaled long and slow, like a tire that had been overinflated for 3 days. Thank you, Gary. Really? I did not tell him he was welcome. There was nothing to thank me for yet. I had not agreed to anything except a conversation, but I already knew how the conversation was going to end. I had known for 3 days. I had just been waiting for them to get there on their own. Some lessons have to be earned. You cannot hand them to people. They have to arrive at the conclusion themselves, through enough pain and enough failed workarounds and enough 2 a.m. conference calls before they actually understand what they lost. By Friday afternoon, they understood. My lawyer had the consulting terms drafted before I even got on that Zoom call. I had asked her to prepare them 3 days earlier. The same afternoon, I walked out of Hartwell's parking lot. I reviewed them one more time Friday morning, made one adjustment to the audit provision, and sent the document over at 8 a.m. No cover note, no pleasantries. Subject line, terms of cooperation. 5 items first. 120 burden, $20 lump sum. Retroactive to the date of termination. Designated as compensation for improper offboarding and failure to execute credential succession protocol under Section 9C second. Full intellectual property recognition for all compliance infrastructure I authored between 2017 and 2024. Transferable only at my discretion, only under co-signature, and only through a process I approved in writing. Third, $320 per hour consulting rate. 40-hour monthly retainer. Non-negotiable. Fourth, infrastructure audit authority for 3 years. Any modification to the encryption stack, the deployment authorization layer, or the compliance certificate pipeline required my written sign-off before implementation. Any attempt to bypass that provision would trigger an automatic return to lockdown status. Fifth, a notation confirming that Noel Briggs's departure was effective immediately and that no successor CEO would be granted system-level authority without completing a documented orientation with me first. The board came back within 2 hours with a redlined version. I did not open it. I sent one reply, a single PDF, terms of cooperation, final, no changes. Roland responded in 4 words, approved. Process it today. The wire confirmation hit my inbox before noon. I joined the Zoom call at 2 p.m., did not turn on my camera, just opened a screen share. The Hartwell system dashboard came up on everyone's screens, red and amber across every pipeline, alerts stacked up like nobody had cleared the mail in a week. The call had about 15 people on it, Pete, Clyde, Wanda, Roland in Florida. A few engineers I recognized, a few faces I did not. Nobody said anything when my screen appeared, just waited. I plugged the keystone into my laptop. One blink, then solid green across the board. Deployments cleared in sequence. SSL renewals processed and pushed. The OSHA compliance dashboard for all 3 industrial clients flipped back to active status. Safety certifications renewed on schedule. The Delco account authorization completed. Every pipeline that had been sitting still for 4 days started moving again, steady and quiet, the way it always had when the system was running the way I built it to run. Nobody clapped. Nobody said anything for a few seconds. Roland broke the silence. His voice was level. Gary will be functioning as external compliance authority going forward. Any changes to system architecture or release authorization require his sign-off. That is not a temporary arrangement. It is a structural one. He paused. No exceptions. I moved the cursor to the top right corner and clicked Leave Meeting. Wrench was waiting by my chair when I closed the laptop. I scratched him behind the ear, poured what was left of the morning coffee into a fresh mug, and sat there for a while without doing anything in particular. That was it. No speech, no final confrontation. No moment where I looked Noel in the eye and explained what he had done wrong. He was already gone by the time I got on that call. The board had handled it without me having to ask. Wanda had found the email. Roland had pushed the vote. The whole thing had unraveled on its own, the way something always does when the person holding it together decides to stop. I still do the monthly retainer. 40 hours, $320 an hour, no badge, no performance reviews, no alignment sessions. I log in from home, check the systems, review any proposed changes, sign off on what needs signing, and log out. If something requires my attention outside the retainer hours, they pay the hourly rate. No exceptions, per item 3 of the terms of cooperation. Wrench sits under my desk while I work. I drink black coffee. When the dashboard is green and there's nothing left to review, I close the laptop and go do something else. I do not think about Noel much. Men like him move on fast. There will be another company that needs reinvigorating, another board looking for fresh energy, another all-hands meeting with a slide deck about eliminating legacy overhead. He will show up, say the same things, and somebody else will nod along and hand him the keys to something they built. That is fine, not my problem anymore. What I think about sometimes when I'm out in the garage or walking Wrench down the street in the evening is the 8 years before any of this happened, the late calls. The patches, the compliance audits I prepped for clients who never knew my name, the system I built piece by piece because I wanted it to work right, not just look right, not because anyone asked me to build it that way, just because that is how I do things. They called it legacy, like the word meant outdated, like experience was a flaw to be corrected. Turns out legacy was the only thing keeping their lights on. If you have spent years building something real, something that works, something that holds up under pressure, while everyone around you is chasing the next shiny idea, and you have been passed over or pushed out, or just quietly ignored while someone younger with a better elevator pitch got the credit, you already know how this story feels. You lived a version of it. Maybe you're living it right now. The system always knows who actually built it. It just takes the right moment for everyone else to find out. If this one hit close to home, hit subscribe. There are more stories where this came from, and every one of them starts with someone underestimating the wrong person.